two parts. Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, I'm going to do the biggest leather project I've ever tried to tackle. I've come across a real nice piece of leather here. Fairly long and wide enough that I believe I can make a nice pair of chaps out of it, or chaps as some people pronounce it. So what I'm going to do is make the main part of the legs out of this leather. Then I'm going to incorporate some hair-on cowhide, and I'm going to use some conchos on both sides or both legs, and then obviously we'll have a way to tie it or strap it together or use a buckle or however in the front. So it's going to be a big project, a fairly long project, I believe. Like I said, I've never done it, so it's going to take a while, and I want to make sure I take my time, don't ruin any of my leather. And with that said, come on in and let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is get some measurements, and I want to make sure that I don't cut any of these too short. Again, I can always take more off, but I can't add any on, so I want to be real careful about that. So the first thing I want to do is check the length, and I am using a sewing tape so I can do these measurements. So I'm going to go from just at my shoe top or around my ankle all the way up to where my belt is right here, the top of my belt. And that length is 36 inches. So I think I'll go 37 inches on the length on that side, and I'll double check both sides just to make sure. So I'm going to go 37 inches from my side, the top of my belt, all the way down to my ankle. So that's my first measurement, it's 37. Then I'm going to do the same on the inseam. So I'll measure from inside the ankle and that's 24 inches. So I'm going to go 25. I'm going to add an inch just to make sure. Now I am going to write this down real quick. So 37 inches would be the outside or the long measurement. 25 inches on the inseam. Now what I want to do is I want to measure around my leg. And I don't want it super tight, and I'm measuring around the top part of my leg, so I make sure I have it wide enough. and that's 24 inches. Now, I don't want them to completely surround my leg, so I want some space or a gap back here because it's to protect the front, not necessarily the back. So we may have to fudge a little bit on that width just because of the length of the piece of leather that I have. You can tell it's pretty long. So we'll see how much width we can get out of each one as I start to go ahead and measure this. So I'm going to measure all of it with a yardstick. This one's aluminum, so that'll be a little more stiff than the tape when I start to transfer some measurements onto this piece of leather. Alright, so we've got 37 inches in length, and I'm going to go as far to the outside here as I possibly can to save as much of this leather as I can. So I'm going to mark it at the top. I can go ahead and mark it all the way down to 36 inches. Then I have to go another inch to make that the 37. So there's my 37 that way. Then I'm going to go all the way across here at the bottom. You can see I'm doing this on the floor because I don't have a workspace big enough to lay this out on. So I'm going to go all the way across. Then I'm going to go up on this side. I'm going to see how long I got here. And that's going to be right at 23. So I'm going to split the difference on that. So they're only going to be about a foot wide. So I'm going to come up an inch to make that 36. And then I'll draw that line all the way up. I better measure over the length or the width first to make sure. It's more like 22. So just to make sure, I'll go ahead and mark that at the same width, 22. I'm going to go ahead and mark the 37 dimension line. And make sure I get my mark on there. My pen's wanting to quit on me. So I've got to get this paper, get it started again. There we go. So I've got 37 by 37, I got 22 and a half by 22 and a half. So if I come up 37 here, go ahead and make my line all the way across at the top. And I do have a small blemish or hole in this piece of leather at the top, but I don't think it's going to interfere with anything. It'll be very small, and that'll be covered underneath the hair-on part, or it'll be at the bottom. So I could always flip it and put it at the bottom. That won't be an issue. So next thing I want to do is make sure that I split this in half. My 37 was my long. This is 22 and a half. So I'll go 11 and a quarter. And mark that. Do the same at the other end. Then I can draw that line, and that will be my center line, where I can get my two pieces before I start cutting on it and doing my inseam measurement. So to cut this, I could use my knife, or I'm going to try, we'll see how this works, I'm going to try to use these heavy-duty shears, and we'll see how it works. It seems to be, the shears seem to be working just fine. As long as they stay nice and sharp. And then that'll let me save some of this leather too. Give me a little more control. Alright, so there's two sides. Then I'll go up the other length. Now I can do the final end cut before I cut those two pieces in half, because I'm going to cut those in half and cut my two legs before I make my inseam cuts or measurements. So there's quite a bit of scrap that I ended up out of that piece. Now I can go ahead and cut this in half, the 37-inch direction. Or I guess I'm traveling the 37-inch direction. Okay, I had to change my battery and my camera died, so put another battery in. Alright, so there's the length on the outside. Let me get you repositioned here. So there's the two pieces of the length that go the outside down to the ankle. Now what I'm going to have to do is measure the inseam and then figure out the angle or radius that I want to cut that inseam at. So let's do that next. The inseam was 25 inches. So we'll come up from the bottom and we're doing the center here. I'm going to make this one the right leg. We'll come up in the center here, 25 inches. Now make me a little mark on both of them. Then I want to radius this a little bit to cut that crotch area out. So I've got to find something big enough or the size that I want to use to do that with. So So I'm gonna look for that, and then I'll be right back. All right, I'm gonna use the largest French curve that I have to get that marked correctly, or at least where I want it. And then I went over from center 4.5 inches each direction to leave that opening to where my strap and the buckle and everything will go. So all I'm doing is putting this where this line, that 4.5 inch line, would come down, and then on my mark down here at my 25 inches. And then I'll just move that up to that line. Let me cut that one out. Then I'll just flip it over and it'll mirror the other side. That way I'll get the angle exactly right on both sides. Then I'll cut it out. Now I can show you exactly my thought process on this. I'm going to try to place a picture up in the video right now of kind of what they're going to look like, just kind of the design of them, so that give you a better idea what we're looking at. So now I can just flip that over, make a mark, using the first one that I cut out, and it'll mirror that. Then I can cut that one out. Then they should be identical, or as close to identical as they can be, and that keeps my curves and everything the same. So let me reposition the camera again. Now you can see I've got the inseam here to here, and then the other side is the full length. So if I put these down like this, now you can see how the crotch part is cut out. So my belt will attach here. So let me lay these out, kind of give you an idea what that's going to look like. And there's my two main front pieces that I'm going to use. I'll probably round off these corners. In fact, let's do that now, and I can do it very subtly. With this, I think I'll do a smaller, tighter radius right here on those corners. I don't want a hard pointed edge there. So I'm just using this little bracket, plastic bracket thing that I saved instead of throwing it in the trash when something that I had broke. I just save it because I use the radiuses on it all the time. Then I'll cut that radius on those four corners, and you'll see when I lay this one back down how much of a difference that looks, instead of having these hard pointed edges. Very quick, very simple to round those edges off. Now that gives you another look of what they're going to look like. And those are your front main panels. Alright, so there's my first pieces, the main pieces for the fronts of the chaps. And now I can move on to adding the hair-on cowhide and the belt system, and also the conchos that we're going to put on it. So it is going to take a little time. Come back to the next video. We'll be adding on the cowhide, the hair-on cowhide to this. It's going to make a huge difference in the way they look. So come on back and check that one out. Thanks for being here to see the first step in this build. I appreciate it. And as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.